بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الغمة. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brothers and sisters, today, can everybody please take a step forward? We have brothers standing in the back, please. Jazakumullah khair. Brothers and sisters, today we see the current state of the Muslim Ummah. We see the current state of Islam. And we watch as the name of Islam and the deen of Islam is being sold under the name of Islam itself. And the bigger catastrophe and the bigger problem is that we see the name and the deen of Islam sold under the hands of those of knowledge, under the hands of some of the scholars, unfortunately, under the hands of those with power. And it should be made very, very clear that the purpose of this khutbah is not to highlight a scholar, is not to highlight an organization, is not to highlight a masjid or a community and call anybody out on their flaws. The sole purpose of this khutbah and the only thing to take away from it is to trying to find the truth and the haqq amongst all the fitna and the fasad that's being spread. Unfortunately, like we said, by people of knowledge themselves, unfortunately, and those with power amongst this ummah. We see in our communities, we see overseas, we see the governments, we see in our local masajid, our local shuyukh, we see many themes and ideologies being pushed onto us. Constant themes around the whole entire world, amongst our Muslim communities here in America and the Chicagoland area. I want to try and reflect on, if we have time, 3 of these ideas, 3 of these themes that they keep pushing on. And the purpose of this khutbah is not to tell you they are correct or they're incorrect, is to show where is this in Islam? Where are they bringing this? Is this truly from the Quran and Sunnah? Is this from Islam or is this not from Islam? Is this a different agenda that you're trying to push? The first point that I would like to make is the point that unfortunately many of the Muslim communities nowadays, they try to spread the idea of interest, the idea of riba and usury, and try to sugarcoat it and make it seem as if it's halal. And student loans and mortgages and anything that has to do with usury or interest. We know that is one of the biggest sins in Islam. They try to sugarcoat it and they try and turn around the idea and make it halal for everybody. Under the principle of what? What do these ulama, these shuyukh, these so-called ulama come and say? Under the principle, the Islamic principle that is used to derive rulings, the qaida shar'iyya, ad-darurat tubihu al-mahdurat. Necessity makes what is impermissible now permissible. Now it is not the current scholars, it's important to understand, it's not the current scholars that have identified this Islamic principle. This principle has been known from the beginning of Islam, from the original scholars that have studied Islam, the greatest scholars that dissected and gave us what we have today. Some of them include Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam ibn al-Qayyim, Imam ibn Taymiyyah, all these ulama that we're talking about, not the current ulama. So when they brought this principle, they also defined its terms, they defined its conditions, they defined what this principle is bounded by and how to extract rulings from it. It's not anybody, it is irrelevant. Anybody can come and take this principle, say, I am in necessity, thus anything that is impermissible is now permissible for me. The ulama defined necessity, the word meaning of necessity, to where a point where a person is being inflicted with harm. Physical harm, and they have even went to the point to say where if you are about to lose a limb off of your body. Physically, not figuratively, brothers and sisters. This is what they defined the word necessity as. And they went on to give an example by Ibn al-Qayyim. If someone is walking in the desert, and he has no food, no water. Nobody is around him. He can't find any help, he can't find any refuge. And he's been walking for kilometers upon kilometers, and he sees nobody, and he's starting to get very hungry. He sees what on the ground in the middle of a desert? A dead animal. They asked, these ulama questioned, they said, is it permissible for this man to eat this dead animal? We know it's haram to eat a dead animal. They said no, because he is in a state of haja. He's in a state of need, not necessity, need. He's very hungry, and he has no food or water around him, but he's not to the point where he's being inflicted with harm. Now they went to say if this man continued his journey for 10, 15 more kilometers, and he is to the point where he will die if he does not eat anything, his organs are shutting down, then they classified this to be a state of necessity. This is necessity. This person is being physically inflicted with harm, thus he is in a state of necessity, and it is allowed for him to eat this dead animal. Under conditions, by the way. And where did this qa'idah, this principle come from? It came from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ وَالدَّمَ وَلَحْمَ الْخِنْزِيرِ وَمَا أُهِلَ بِهِ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prefaces this ayah by saying, it is forbidden for you to eat the dead animal, the swine, and the blood, and anything that is slaughtered other than the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if someone is compelled by necessity, the same word that the ulama use, necessity, which we just defined, neither driven by desire nor exceeding immediate need, then they will not be sinful. Focus on these two words. غَيْرُ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ. So that means, غَيْرُ بَاغٍ, I am not doing it out of my own will. I'm not happy that I'm doing this action that is now permissible for me. Although I am to the point of death, I am only doing it so I could survive, not so I could flourish, and I'm happy that I'm eating a dead animal. The second condition in which this principle is bounded by, وَلَا عَادٍ, meaning that he does not overexceed what he needs. In the same example that the fuqaha, not today's scholars, the fuqaha defined, they said it is to the point where the man eats what he needs from this dead animal only to survive, and he continues his journey. Now come and apply this principle to what the scholars today apply it as. They come and say, and they label everybody in America, everybody in a non-Muslim country, everybody's in necessity. Everybody needs to buy a house. Everybody needs to go to school and go to college. Everybody needs a credit score to live in this country. And they label everybody under necessity. And this is not something that I heard. This is something that I experienced. This is firsthand, talking to these scholars, talking to these Muslim organizations. And like I said, not to point anybody out, but this, where is this from the deen? Where did they extract this from the principle? This is a principle that the ulama define, and they come and tell you, everybody's in necessity now. I need a credit score to live. What about the thousands of people that live in this country without a credit score? What about the non-Muslim Americans themselves that say, you don't need a credit score to survive in this country? You don't need a credit score. The Americans themselves tell you, will it make your life harder? It will make your life very much harder. But is this life, the point of this life to relax and enjoy it? Or is the point of this life a test? It is a hardship. So think about it. This is what the fuqaha say. This is what they define this principle as. How come they were able to turn this principle around and come and label everybody as in a state of necessity? And if in the future I am going to need to provide for my family, thus I will be in a state of necessity, is this what the principle is based off of? Is it based off the future, or is it based off the present and being necessity? So don't sugarcoat what Islam is. Don't sugarcoat the words of the ulama themselves that define these terms. Understand it. And don't take it for what you want, based on your whim, whatever is easier for me. I'm going to find the shaykh, because it's so easy nowadays. I know a million shuyukh that I can go to, and they will give you a fatwa on absolutely anything you want. Is that what I'm seeking? We said at the beginning, the purpose of this khutbah is to seek truth among all the fitna. The fitna that unfortunately someone calls himself a scholar and tries to tell you these things. The second point that I want to make, or the second point that I want to identify, that a lot of these organizations, these scholars trying to push is the idea of interfaith. The idea that Islam is nothing but a relationship between man and his creator. That's it. It's just tawheed. You just believe Allah exists, you pray 5 times a day, when Ramadan comes you fast. That is all Islam is. Under the excuse of what? We are all Abrahamic religions. We are all people of the book. We're nothing different than Christians and Jews. We're the same thing. And they make these conventions, and they call them a conversation. Jews and Christians and Muslims, and they could sit, and they could talk, I worship this God, you worship this God, and then we all go home happily ever after. Is that what Islam is? Is Islam just ibadah? Is Islam just I believe and I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that's it? It has no details in your life. Does Islam not solve every single problem a human will face, from his birth to his death? Does Islam not teach us how to eat, what to eat, how to use the bathroom, how to interact with the opposite gender, how to interact in society, how to deal in trading? Does it not identify all these things? And they watered down Islam all the way down to just worship whatever God you want, under the excuse of the great compromise, secularism, the greatest word and term that they like to use, separating church and state. And they've infiltrated into Islam. And these scholars carry these ideas and they try to force Muslims to accept it. Listen, this is all Islam is. Don't try to make Islam anything more than just worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I ask you, where is this in Islam? Where is this in the Quran and the Sunnah? Where is this? Where Allah only talks about ibadah, only talks about tawheed, has nothing to do with the rest of your entire life. It's just acknowledging that there's a creator and I worship him. Where is this in the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? And they come and tell you, Alim Fulan said this, or Alim Fulan said that, or this organization is preaching this idea, so I have to follow it. Is that what we look for nowadays in a scholar? We look for a blue check mark next to their name, that they're verified, and I take all the information from them? Is the only source of Islam that we get, the only dose of Islam, through a 60-second video on TikTok or Instagram, with choir in the background, and he's saying something so beautiful, and that's the only dose of Islam I get? That's the only thing Islam is about? It has become just like the other Abrahamic religions. And that's the fitna that you're trying to spread amongst the Muslims. Don't worry about anything else going on around the world. Just worry about worshiping your Creator. And we'll provide any resources you want. In this country, outside of this country, we'll make you comfortable. We'll even build masajids for you. Just don't try and preach any idea other than, I want to worship Allah on my own. And the very last point I want to make is the idea of voting. Every single election season comes around, you see these masajid, the houses of Allah, filled with people that are running for government positions. Muslims and non-Muslims alike, unfortunately. They bring you a non-Muslim congressman to preach to Muslims. Get involved in this non-Islamic government. Get involved and vote and represent yourself in a government that is based off of democracy, that is based off of human legislation. What is Tawheed? Tawheed is to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your creator and you are a creation. And anything that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you should follow. Not man creates what's right and wrong, and man creates morality, and man is the one that decides laws. This is against the aqeedah of Islam, and they come and preach this in the masajid and tell you, vote brother, vote. Bring me your evidence. Where is this in the Quran and the Sunnah? Where is this where it says that we should give up our whole entire aqeedah in order to what? Under the excuse that we need to represent ourselves in this country. Muslims need a voice in this country. Is this the way? Is this the way of Islam? Did we not say Islam offers you a solution for everything? And you want to come and tell me, go vote and go participate in a government that is built against Islam, that is built against the aqeedah and the sharia of Islam, that is built to kill Muslims and fight Muslims on a daily basis. And you want to go and bring these people and tell me, go vote for these people. This is the trend, unfortunately, that we see. This is the trend. These so quote-unquote scholars keep pushing these ideas. But we can't be sheep. We can't follow blindly. You have to seek the truth. And the truth is hard. It's hard to accept. Now we said, we've seen a trend with the scholars that have been pushing these ideas. What about, there has to be scholars that are pushing the opposite idea, the true idea of Islam, right? There has to be people standing up for the idea of Islam, truly, right? Of course there is. Where are they? Wiped off the face of the planet. What happened 2 weeks ago? In Mecca, Shaykh Saleh al-Talib stood on a minbar in front of all the Muslims in Mecca, in front of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what did he preach? He preached and he said, don't be fooled by what the government's offering you. Don't be fooled by the fitna that they're bringing in. Don't be fooled by the liquor stores that they're opening and all these places of da'ar and fahisha that they're opening up. And the ideas of LGBTQ that they're making normal. In the holiest land on earth. And all these entertainers that they're bringing in. And he stood and he fought against the entertainment sector of the government itself. He was warning Muslims. He was warning Muslims of fitna. He was trying to spread the true idea of Islam. What happened to him after that? This was 2 weeks ago. He was sentenced 10 years in prison. 10 years in prison for a man to stand on a minbar and call for Islam. Warn his fellow, his brothers and sisters in Islam. Warn them against the fitna in the holiest land, in Mecca. He was in prison. What type of so-called Islamic government is this that has a flag that says La ilaha illallah and they imprison a man for calling for Islam in front of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Same story with Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid. When people in the Denmark decided to insult Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam between 2010 and 2012, somewhere around those years. He stood up on a minbar on a Friday just like this and he called the Muslims to act against how do you let a non-Muslim insult your Prophet like that? He called for the so-called Muslim governments in Muslim countries to move a finger, to move their armies, to stop this chaos, stop this fitna, to stand up for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What happened to him after that? He was in prison. Until now he's in prison. No one knows his whereabouts. Another example, Sheikh Mahmoud Shaban in Egypt. Same idea, calling for Islam, also imprisoned. This isn't something that is modern. When we look back at the fuqaha back in the day, when they truly called for Islam, their fate was the same fate. Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, when groups such as the Mu'tazila started to rise and say the Quran was created, and they tried to understand the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentally with their mind. And guess what? The Sultan, the leader at that time, started adopting their ideas. Guess what Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said? He said, let's just go with it. There's nothing I could do. I'm one scholar. He stood against these people. He stood against the Sultan himself. And he called for Islam. He said, what you're adopting is false. This is bid'ah. This is not from Islam. And I'm calling the Muslims to what Islam is. He was in prison. Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykhul Islam, one of the greatest names in Islamic scholars. Same fate, with the same group of people as Shaykh Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Also in prison. For years upon years, for calling for nothing but the haqq, nothing for Islam. And here we are today, following scholars, left and right, that call for nothing other than Islam. They call for everything other than Islam. Don't take everything with a grain of salt just because he calls himself a shaykh or an imam or an alim. Where is this? Is this from Islam? Is this from the Quran and Sunnah? If you're living happily ever after and you're making all this money, then guess what? That's a red flag. Then you're probably preaching something wrong. Open your eyes as a Muslim ummah, as a Muslim. Don't just follow blindly and blame the ulama. Wallah, this shaykh told me, so he'll take care of it. He's responsible on the day of judgment. You're responsible. Al-ilmu qabla al-qawli wal-amal. You seek knowledge before what? Before you say anything or you do any action. You're held accountable. It took 45 minutes of research to understand this qa'idah ad-darurat tubi'u al-mahdurat, and it's at the tip of our fingers on these devices. And here we are just following blindly all these scholars with all these ideas in the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have no excuse. And it gets worse and worse, day after day, year after year. The final point I want to make is to seek the truth. Seek the truth no matter what. What did these scholars, all the Muslimin, what did they want at the end of the day? The pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, correct? They just want to seek the truth. What does Allah want from me? And Imam al-Shafi'i himself, when he used to have a munadhara, or when he used to have a debate with another imam, and he'd bring their evidence to see whose evidence is stronger, Imam al-Shafi'i himself would say, I hope that this person provides stronger evidence so I could be convinced. Because at the end of the day, it's not just I want to express what I think the interpretation is. Even Imam al-Shafi'i himself, he just wants the answer. He wants the truth. He wants to know what Allah wants from him in this dunya. And that's what every single one of us should seek to do. Just seek the truth. Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam once told Abu Darda, hadith sahih, authenticated by Ibn Habban. Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu said, قال لي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قل الحق ولو كان مرا. Rasulullah told Abu Dharr, a sahabi, he said, say the truth even if it is bitter. Even if people will hate you, even if you will be physically harmed, even if you will be tossed in prison, Say the truth even if it's bitter. Because why? Because this is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what being a Muslim is. This is what spreading Islam is. This is true Islam. We don't water down Islam. Not just because some government wants to force you to not worship properly or follow Islam properly. Not just because some masjid does this and that. Not just to become the majority. Not just because the majority of the world or the Muslim ummah unfortunately might follow this idea. It just makes it okay for me to follow it. Follow the haqq and speak the haqq and seek the haqq even if it is going to bring you hardship in this dunya. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين. أما بعد فيا معشر المسلمين أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد بعدد ما صلى وصام. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد بعدد من قعد وقام. اللهم صل على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين وسائر الصحابة والتابعين وعلى عبادك الصالحين. اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا منهم. اللهم اخذل من خذل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم ثبتنا على الإسلام. اللهم نور قلوبنا بنور الإيمان. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم لا تدع لنا في هذا اليوم المبارك ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا دينا إلا قضيته ولا مريضا إلا شافيته وعافيته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا إلا يسرتها يا رب العالمين. عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. واذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أعلى وأولى وأعز وأهم وأتم وأجل وأكبر. السلام.